Hey, welcome. My name is Daniel, and this is Metal Sharpens Metal. I am glad you're here. This is my second Meshuggah video for this channel. It turns out you can't just address an entire band with one video, so here's a second video. I'm making my way downtown, chugging fast. I'm sorry I had to go there. Anyway, a few people commented on the last video. Godless Being, he threw out a list of a bunch of songs and then basically said their entire discography. Okay, cool. So anything's good to go there. Retsia, he posted a link to their 2023 Bloodstock live video. He basically said literally any song in that set list. A third guy, you see how I'm kind of like triangulating on how I found this song. Sergio Agra 3846, he said, try Straws Pulled at Random. It's the best song of Meshuggah. Another dude said the ending, he finds himself humming it out of nowhere. I totally get that feeling because that happens to me all the time. There's just a perpetual circus of different songs playing in my head. This is going to be like the fourth song I've heard from them total, because I haven't listened to any of these songs yet. I listened to the first like 2 seconds, literally just like the opening. And then I went through and started looking at the lyrics and trying to find out, you know, kind of which one I was going to analyze, because I try not to go into these totally cold. I want to have a little bit to present to you, a little bit of research done. I found a lot more in these lyrics than I originally anticipated. I'm going to address what I mean by that later. But yeah, there's a lot. Thomas is not just a one-string banjo guy. He's got a lot of strings on his banjo. But anyway, because of all of that, I decided let's go look at Straws Pulled at Random. I'm excited to talk with you guys about it. Let's go check out the song. I'm not totally sure if this is going to surprise me as much as Obzen did, because honestly, the Obzen breakdown in the middle, it threw me, and the bouncy riff that I've talked about. But either way, I'm sure the song's gonna be great. Let's go, Jens. Let's go. Is this one of those riffs that sounds like it's just one thing over and over, but it's actually 11:19? Oh man. Bow, bow. Oh. Those bow wows are, I love that. Wow. Dust. What? His phrasing is all over the place. I was in the wrong spot. Polarity. Oh. The big, yeah. Okay, that was, yeah, they were like doing that bendy thing I talked about. Like bringing that up and raising the tension. Like, they're doing a great job at not letting you hold on to like just a straightforward groove, because I think that fits into the lyrics, the lyrical themes. Notice he's got the little leash to his microphone. Oh, this is a really cool ending. I assume this is the ending. We're already through the lyrics. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, so proggy. I mean, I know they're progressive, but like, I can't pick a band that this is reminding me of, but yeah, jazzy, fusiony almost. So Thomas is holding down the man, that's hard to time. Yeah, I'm not gonna bother counting this right now. Oh man, that was sweet. Was that it? Okay, it was like, yeah, they are, that was like what, 5+ minutes? Yeah. These songs, they go too fast, like you get stuck in a trance almost. Wow, that was really cool. Like, how did they fit that much stuff into 5 minutes? Or rather, how did they make 5 minutes feel so fast? That's what's surprising. It really, yeah. It's like, where did the time go? Yeah, that was cool. The jazzy fusion stuff at the ending. The kind of, well, and now I'm forgetting, but like there was a very asynchronous, chugging breakdown that kind of like rolls over. But I love it. They'll take like this rhythm and they'll just beat it into submission, and then they'll down tune on top of it. As a man of simple virtue who abuses metaphors, to the point of absurdity to make people around me laugh, sometimes it works.
It gets a laugh like a quarter of the time.
I appreciate their tendency to like take a concept musically and be like, you know what? Yeah, you like that bleed chug? This isn't just the breakdown. This is the song. Like, we're gonna just abuse it and see what happens at the extreme outer limits of, when you play these things for longer than like 15 seconds. We're gonna go for it. So I really appreciate it. Somebody had to do it, and here they are. Here they are going for it. Because this song didn't, super blow my mind or make my caveman brain activate and get the chug horse ready for war or anything like that. But they just have so much more than I expect. When you think of them, you just think of just chugs, just bleed all the time. But no, they've got a lot of complexity. They've been doing this for a very long time. What are they at? 30 years probably now? Yeah, they've got a lot to offer for sure. I'm excited to go through more in the future too. I'm already like thinking of the next song. But anyway, let's jump into this. So when I was looking through the lyrics for Obzen when I did my first video, I listened to an interview with Thomas where he said that basically that whole album is about humans achieving Zen through all these horrible, wicked, brutal activities. It's this horrible side of the human condition. That's what he was trying to address. And I kind of thought, man, maybe they just write about that all the time. Like, humanity kind of sucks and we do crazy things and let's talk about it, But I found that to be not the case at all. I was looking through a few different songs. I'm not going to name which ones yet because I want to make a video for some of these in the future. But I realized that there's a pretty wide breadth of topics that Thomas covers. He definitely writes about darkness, and a lot of dark imagery is in there. And very little hope is presented still. That's one thing I talked about in the first video, but it was refreshing to realize that there's a lot more to engage with than I originally thought. So I'm excited. And on that point, I just want to make a quick note. The godless being guy that I mentioned in the comments, I had said, I'm kind of surprised that you came to this video and that you liked it, because, I'm discussing these things from a Christian worldview, and I didn't think that the godless being would be appreciative of that. But he was like, you know what? No, I appreciate it. I want to see more analysis, all that stuff. And he was like, you don't have to bring religion into everything. And I was like, well, okay, but to be fair, Meshuggah kind of started it, and they have more religious references than just like saying Christ in the title of one of their songs or something like that. They address things from what I am calling their religious worldview. And I would argue that everybody has a religious worldview. These are the foundational beliefs that we all have, that we don't question. They are axiomatic, true understandings of the world. That's how we understand the world. I'm not saying they're all true. I'm not saying everybody's valid or anything like that, because there's a lot of contradictions. So when you're figuring out which ones are true, that's a different discussion. My point is that everybody comes to the table with these beliefs that they have, and they are operating in the background. They're like the operating system on our brain software and stuff like that. So I'm not trying to dump on godless being or rub this in his face or anything, but I would say that religion and music is as inevitable as Thanos' snap with the Infinity Stones. And I'm talking about in the universe where that actually happened, not the universe where he didn't do it. And I already recognize that I'm going too far again with a metaphor, but I think hopefully you can get my point. Everybody brings their beliefs to the table, and Thomas in his lyrics is no exception for sure. All right, so let's go through Thomas's lyrics. There's not tons of them here, and we'll see what he was going for. What solace lies in the arms of fate? So the arms of fate, that's going to be an important term. The ill embrace of uncertainty, equating fate and uncertainty as somewhere where you do not find solace. When did I leave this in other hands? So no control of my own over my life, I guess, to be pulled down at chance, meaning like anything can happen in your life. You don't have full control over it. And that is frustrating to him. He's ripped away by destiny claws. Sounds like a Pokemon move or something. That's cool. Am I another of fate's possessions? And that kind of brings to mind like the fates in what is it? Roman mythology, like Greco-Roman mythology, where the fates were like these old ladies that just kind of spun the tapestry of the world, and it got a little kind of random, and it was just up to whatever they did.
My fate is in your lovely hands.
Ow.
So if you are part of that world, then you're just another one of fate's possessions, dwelling in the lie of freedom, like freedom's an illusion. Just another straw pulled at random. I don't remember why, but I wanted to teach my kids recently about straws pulled at random. I actually haven't gotten around to it yet. So I'm a bad father, I guess. But I wanted to show them that concept where you put the straws in, they're all the same height when they're here, but behind your hand, one of them is shorter than the rest. And I feel like, this has been in dozens of movies and stuff like that. Like in wartime movies, they're like, well, who's going to go breach the stronghold? So you pull the straws, all of them are the same length, except one of them is much shorter. And then that person looks at it and they go, shucks. And it's interesting. He says we flow suspended in semi-life. Like you're not truly living unless you are able to have self-control over your fate. And unless you can control when oblivion claims our breath. And I don't think anybody would make the claim that they can prevent themselves from dying forever and control like, no, I'm going to be here as long as I want. The bouncer can't kick me out. I'll be here. And then when I'm ready, I'll die. It's like, people say that and people kind of think that way, but nobody can say, well, I'm just going to add another 80 years to my life. Like that's not how this works. And this is an interesting kind of introspection at the end. Have I appeased the gods of fate? Am I allowed another day? Must I die to escape the scanning eyes of death? The Grim Reaper, like he's scanning around, seeing who's going to die next. And then it's interesting that the time of your death is like part of the reason why you're not free, but then dying is like a form of escape, or at least that's the question, right? Like if I die, will I finally escape this pattern of being in fate's clutches, stuff like that. So yeah, really, really interesting, really raises a whole lot of interesting topics, and it's well written. I like how Thomas writes. He gets his points across. So I don't know if Thomas would explicitly call himself a materialist atheist or anything like that, but a lot of this wording sounds like it's written from the point of view of materialism and atheism. Materialism meaning there's nothing beyond kind of the material experience. There's no heaven, no hell. We exploded from stardust, and to stardust we shall return when we die. And then the sun swallows up the earth and we all just explode and everything was meaningless. Bring that to your next Friday night party. That's a fun discussion there. And what's interesting is there's no concept of free will in atheism. And I know that some people think that that's the exact opposite. Like atheism is the definition of free will, because if there's no God, no devil, like we are doing exactly what we want. And that is what free will is, right? But there are some interesting articles from atheists talking about how, and one of my good atheist friends from back in the day, he was like, no, I don't believe there's any free will. Like, if we are the material that started, the universe started with the Big Bang, we evolved to get here, and now we're here today. We're just the product of a big slow motion explosion, and there's nothing but our brain fizz. So how could we have free will if it's just like, when I look at this picture, two atoms collide in my head and tell me, yay, it's a pretty picture of a flower. Like, that's not free will. That's just what's been pre-programmed all along. So in that sense, our lives are fixed. And not only would our lives be fixed, but as Richard Dawkins says, we live in a blind, pitiless, indifferent universe. Like, the universe does not care about us. There's no higher power that's helping anyone or orchestrating things or any of that. He says there's no justice. Like, we don't have any reason to be morally upset at anything. It's effectively the same thing as a rock falling down the hill and hitting another rock. We don't get morally outraged about that either. But in the Christian view, we see a God who ordains all things and created us as responsible, free creatures to live our lives according to his purpose.
Oh, there is a God, and he has a plan for us after all.
Proverbs 21:1 says that God turns the heart of the king in his hand. Matthew 10:29 through 31, Jesus is talking about how if God will even pay attention to the number of hairs on our head and how a sparrow flies in the field and dies and all these things, then how much more will he pay attention to what we see as the important things? Even Proverbs 16:33 says that nothing is random. Even a dice roll is not random. It is in God's hand. And this obviously flies in the face of what's being asked in these lyrics. Is this all random? Am I just going back to the origin-vortex? Am I living this semi-life? Everything's imminent. Everything is just fate and determined, and it's all done. And so the answer is no. There actually is a creator who is in charge of all these things and ordains all these things. Now, I know some of you are going to be hearing that and saying, does that mean Christianity says there's no free will? Like, I thought that was one of the main points, right? And that depends on what you mean by the word free will. If you mean we can do whatever we want, whenever we want, without any external reference, and we basically have godlike autonomy in our actions and things like that, then no, the Bible does not say that. The Bible says God is like that. God has the power to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He is the creator. He is the initiator. He is the first cause. In Christianity, man has a nature. Obviously, God has a nature. Everything has a nature. But our actions are limited to our nature, and our desires are limited to our nature. So we make our choices and live according to that nature. So it's a type of will. It's obviously a will, and I would say it's a free will. Like, we're free. God is not grabbing our hands, wrapping them around the gun, and being like, sin, and then like making us pull the trigger and hurt somebody. That is not what the Bible says at all. And we do those things because our hearts want us to. The 1689 London Baptist Confession puts it this way. In the Divine Providence section, chapter 5 here, section 2, it says, all things come to pass unchangeably and certainly in relation to the foreknowledge and decree of God, who is the first cause. Thus, nothing happens to anyone by chance or outside of God's providence. Yet by the same providence, God arranges all things to occur according to the nature of second causes, either necessarily, freely, or in response to other causes. Like, there's kind of different ways that God uses secondary causes. And then in section 3 here, in his ordinary providence, God makes use of means, though he is free to work apart from them, beyond them, and contrary to them at his pleasure. So we cannot thwart the will of God. We cannot do whatever we want and get away with it. And God's like, geez, like, I didn't get him in time. It's all in his control. A good biblical example of this would be Jesus on the cross, like one of the biggest points in the Bible, right? Peter is giving a sermon at Pentecost. This is after Jesus has risen from the dead and ascended back to heaven. Peter says, men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves know. So, like, you're familiar with Jesus, right? Like, we all saw him. This is who I'm talking about. This Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. So these people were not even the people that were nailing Jesus' hands to the cross. But Peter says, you crucified him by the hands of these lawless men. Who are the lawless men? Pontius Pilate, the Pharisees, the people who wanted to crucify Jesus, like the people who were actually out there and said, no, give us back Barabbas instead of Jesus. They're all responsible. And Peter says that this was according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God. So God wanted Jesus to be crucified too. God wanted that to happen in order to make a path for his people, in order to allow forgiveness, reconciliation with God, payment for sins, all those important things that the gospel talks about. And how did he do the crucifixion? He didn't just warp Jesus down there, plant him on the cross and be like, here's what I'm doing. The people brought him there of their own free will, of their own accord. They all did it. They chose it. They wanted it. And it was still in God's plan. So yeah, hopefully that kind of helps you categorize these things and understand how God wants these things to happen. People do what they want, but then God uses that to achieve his purposes as well. So yeah, you're still here. I'm honestly surprised. I fully expect that this will upset some people when they start thinking through some of this. I think it's pretty natural for us to buck against this teaching. We don't like to feel like we're out of control, that God is, the one making the determinations, and that we don't have the same level of power as him. Like, that's why I think there's so much of a movement today to say that we are gods. We are able to create reality. We are able to, shape the world in the way that we want. But yeah, ultimately, this comes back to the very first temptation in the Garden of Eden. When the snake asked, don't you want to have the same level of knowledge of good and evil as God does? Don't you want to be able to self-actualize and do whatever you want, understand these issues? But in response to feeling kind of revulsion at this teaching, I would say that God's control is actually the very thing that comforts the believer. Because rather than believing that we live in this chaotic, purposeless universe, we can take comfort in the fact that we are in a universe that was carefully designed and created for God's glory, for the good of his people, all of those things. That's comforting for those who recognize our powerlessness in light of eternity. So yeah, thanks for sticking with me if you made it this far and discussing some weighty philosophy and theology. Again, Thomas brought it up first, okay? Blame him. I love that Vody quote. What does he say?
I don't write the mail, I just deliver it.
And I said it before, and I'll say it again. I think Thomas is very insightful and a thoughtful dude when he's writing these lyrics. Still hoping we can get that beer sometime, Thomas. And I'm glad he's taken the first step in considering these things. And putting pen to paper, allowing us to kind of wrestle through with some of these concepts as well. Hope that was beneficial to you to go through that journey with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
I'm sorry, I just started hearing really loud circus music in my head. What did you say?